Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र सत श्री श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. श्रीमद भगवद गीता as it is की जय. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya. Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Please repeat. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 24. Please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 7, text 24. Avyaktam Vyaktim Apannam Manyante Mam Abhuddhaya Param Bhavam Ajananto Mamavyayam Anuttamam. Avyaktam Vyaktimapannam. Avyaktam Vyaktimapannam. Manyante Mama Buddhaya. Manyante Mama Buddhaya. Param Bhavamajananto. Param Bhavamajananto. Mamavyayam Anuttamam. Mamavyayam Anuttamam. Avyaktam Vyaktimapannam. Manyante Mama Buddhaya. Param Bhavamajananto. Mamavyayam Anuttamam. Avyaktam Vyaktimapannam. Manyante Mama Buddhaya. Param Bhavamajananto. Mamavyayam Anuttamam. Please repeat. You should share it also on the group. Avyaktam Vyaktimapannam. Manyante mama buddhayah param bhavam ajananto mama vyayam anuttamam avyaktam vyaktimapannam manyante mama buddhayah param bhavam ajananto mama vyayam anuttamam avyaktam vyaktimapannam manyante mama buddhayah jananto param bhavam ajananto mama vyayam anuttamam. Mataji's. Avyaktam vyaktimapannam manyante mama buddhayah param bhavam ajananto mama vyayam anuttamam. Okay. Word to word translations. Avyaktam, non-manifested. Vyaktim, personality. Apannam, achieved. Manyante, think. Mam, me. Abhuddhayah, less intelligent persons. Param, supreme. Bhavam, existence. Ajanantaha, without knowing. Mama, my. Avyayam, imperishable. Anuttamam, the finest. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. Purport. Those who are worshippers of demigods have been described as less intelligent persons, and here the impersonalists are similarly described. Lord Krishna, in his personal form, is here speaking before Arjuna, and still due to ignorance, impersonalists argue that the Supreme Lord ultimately has no form. Yamuna Acharya, a great devotee of the Lord in the disciplic succession of Ramanujacharya, has written two very appropriate verses in this connection. He says, Twamshil, Swamshil, Arup, Acharitaf, Paramaf, Prakrishtai, Satvena, Satvikataya, Prabhalaischa, Sastrair, Prakyat, Adaiva, Paramartha, Vidamatayischa, Naivasura, Prakrtyaf, Prabhavantya Bodham. My dear Lord, devotees like Vyasadeva and Narada know you to be the personality of Godhead. By understanding different Vedic literatures, one can come to know your characteristics, your form, and your activities. And one can thus understand that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, the demons, the non-devotees, cannot understand you. They are unable to understand you. However expert such non-devotees may be in discussing Vedanta, the Upanishads, and the other Vedic literatures, it is not possible for them to understand the personality of Godhead. Stotra Ratna, verse 12. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the personality of Godhead cannot be understood simply by study of the Vedanta literature. Only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord can the personality of the Supreme be known. Therefore, in this verse, it is clearly stated that not only are the worshippers of the demigods less intelligent, but those non-devotees who are engaged in Vedanta and speculation on Vedic literature without any tinge of true Krishna consciousness are also less intelligent. And for them, it is not possible to understand God's personal nature. Persons who are under the impression that the absolute truth is impersonal are described as abhuddhayaha, which means those who do not know the ultimate feature of the absolute truth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the supreme realization begins from the impersonal Brahman and then rises to the localized supersoul. But the ultimate word in the absolute truth is the personality of Godhead. Modern impersonalists are still less intelligent, for they don't even know that their great predecessor Shankaracharya, who has specifically stated that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Impersonalists, therefore, not knowing the supreme truth, think Krishna to be only the son of Devaki and Vasudev, or a prince, or a powerful living entity. This is also condemned in Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam. Only the fools regard me as an ordinary person. The fact is that no one can understand Krishna without rendering devotional service and without developing Krishna consciousness. The Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 29 confirms this. Atapi te deva padambuja dvaya prasad leshanu grihita evahi janati tattvam bhagavan mahimno nachanya eko pichiram vichinvan. My Lord, if one is favored even by a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the supreme personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. One cannot understand the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna, or his form, quality, or name simply by mental speculation or by discussing Vedic literature. One must understand him by devotional service. When one is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, beginning by chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then only can one understand the supreme personality of Godhead. Non-devotee impersonalists think that Krishna has a body made of this material nature and that all his activities, his form, and everything are Maya. These impersonalists are known as Mayavadis. They do not know the ultimate truth. The 20th verse clearly states that Kama istaistai hritajnana prapadyante nidevataha. Those who are blinded by lusty desires surrender unto the different demigods. It is accepted that besides the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are demigods who have different planets. And the Lord also has a planet. As stated in the 23rd verse, Devan deva yajo yanti mad bhakta yanti mam api. The worshippers of the demigods go to the different planets of the demigods. And those who are worshippers, or those who are devotees of Lord Krishna, go to the Krishna Loka planet. Although this is clearly stated, the foolish impersonalists still maintain that the Lord is formless and that these forms are impositions. From the study of the Gita, does it appear that the demigods and their abodes are impersonal? Clearly, neither the demigods nor Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are impersonal. They are all persons. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he has his own planet, and the demigods have theirs. Therefore, the monistic contention that the ultimate truth is formless and that form is imposed does not hold true. It is clearly stated here that it is not imposed. From the Bhagavad Gita, we can clearly understand that the forms of the demigods and the form of the Supreme Lord are simultaneously existing, and that Lord Krishna is Satchidananda, eternal blissful knowledge. The Vedas also confirm that the Supreme Absolute Truth is Anandamayo Bhyasat, or by nature, full of blissful pleasure, and that he is the reservoir of unlimited auspicious qualities. In the Gita, the Lord says that although he is Aja, unborn, he still appears. These are the facts that we should understand from the Bhagavad Gita. We cannot understand how the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be impersonal. The imposition theory of the impersonalist monist is false as far as the statements of the Gita are concerned. It is clear herein that the Supreme Absolute Truth, Lord Krishna, has both form and personality. Can this be tightened? Can you do it as tight? Okay. Om Ajnana-Timirandhasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamakyam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utappada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Avyaktam Vyaktimapannam Manyante Mama Buddhayaha Param Bhavama Jananto Mama Avyayam Anuttamam. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So, among the different verses of Bhagavad Gita, for the Vaishnavas or the devotees who practice Krishna consciousness, this is one of the most important verses of the Bhagavad Gita, because it establishes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is not some impersonal energy, but rather an actual person. Now, the conception of energy is an interesting one, that people think something is impersonal. Actually, we don't have, apart from our imagination, we do not have any factual or clear experience of anything that is fully impersonal. Or something that is fully impersonal, meaning it has no connection with anything personal. Even if we consider, so can we think of something that is impersonal? Huh? A rock is not impersonal. It has a form. It has characteristics. The rock could be granite, it could be marble, it could be, any other type of it could be limestone, sandstone. There's so many types of rocks. So, a rock is not impersonal. What then do we have? Do we have any experience of something that is, at least let's begin like saying this, is formless? Light is formless. Light is formless. Okay, now if we take light, there is a source for light, and that source is always having a form. There is no experience of light that exists without a source, and then that source immediately has a form. What else can we think of as being formless? Electricity is formless. Electricity is formless, but there is a source for the electricity. Immediately. Huh? Can't electricity and light be measured so they can take that form? They can be measured, but they don't have a form still. I mean, they can be measured. In that sense, they do have characteristics, so that's a good point, that they have characteristics. Okay, energy. Energy, right? People say, I feel your energy. There are people have some energy, He says high energy or low energy or whatever, Immediately that energy has a source. It has a source, and that source comes from something that has a form. Now, whatever be that energy, even if it is, if you study physics, you have kinetic energy, and then you have static energy, I think those are the two ones, right? Potential. Yeah, potential. Oh my God. So you have all these different kinds of energies, but for all types of energies, there is a source. There is a source. So, in this way, now, there are certain things where, having said that, we can think that, okay, well, I can think of something that doesn't seem to have a source. Air. Where does air come from? Air just exists, right? Does it have a source? Well, the fact that air doesn't exist all over the universe, that, for instance, in outer space, air doesn't exist. That means air is localized, which means that that air being localized has a particular place, position, from which that air is able to sustain and maintain its quality of being air. Otherwise, air wouldn't exist. So in this way, it is very difficult for us to find things that are truly impersonal. And this is the point that Srila Prabhupada is making over here. That the fact that we don't have it, now people will say, well, that's the point. That which is the source of everything is fully beyond our experience and therefore must be completely different to what we are experiencing. One can make that argument, but that is at best an argument. Because if you say something is completely different, it doesn't mean that it has to be diametrically opposite. It's just that everything has a form here, therefore that which is supreme has to be formless. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be completely opposite. For instance, I may not want to have fruits, but that doesn't mean I have to starve. I can eat vegetables. I can drink water. I can take milk. I can take so many things. It doesn't mean that when you say that when something should not have the quality of having a form, it immediately has to be formless. And besides, just because something has to be supreme doesn't mean that it has to be formless. Because within that argument is a premise that which has a form has to be material. And the supreme being non-material, therefore cannot have a form. There is an inbuilt premise in there. And that premise is nothing but an assumption. Because one cannot, even on the basis of logic and probability, one cannot say that something that has a form must be material, just because within our experience, whatever we see that has a form is made of matter. It doesn't mean that which is supreme has to if it has a form, then that supreme also has to be material. This is the mistake that the Mayavadis make, which is why they're called Mayavadis, because their basis of understanding Brahman is based on the illusion that we are experiencing right now in this world. It is not based on understanding the nature of the supreme, but rather it is kind of like constructing an image of this or a conception of the supreme based upon what we experience here. But what we experience here is temporary, right? And therefore is illusory. And because that is illusory, if you build it up from that, your conception of Brahman automatically becomes faulty. Because the whole point is to understand, and that's where humility is required, is that Brahman or Krishna is actually beyond our level of perception. We cannot perceive him with our minute senses, but we can perceive him when we receive the knowledge of how to perceive him. For instance, by our own speculation, we may never be able to perceive or completely understand a problem in a computer. Say your computer has some issue. It's malfunctioning. You may not completely be able to understand. You can read a bunch of books and this you may still not be able to understand. But a computer technician can explain it to you. Immediately you will be able to see. In the same way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, his situation is beyond our level of experience here. And therefore, to understand him, we have to receive the knowledge from scriptures like Bhagavad Gita. Now, Srila Prabhupada, and therefore, the impersonalists and demigods have been described as to be less intelligent. Why are the worshippers, not the demigods themselves, but the worshippers of the demigods and the worshippers of the impersonal form are said to be less intelligent? Why are they called to be less intelligent? Because those who are worshipping demigods, they don't care to find out what is the source of the power of those demigods. For instance, one may go and worship a particular government clerk or a particular government official, but if he understands that the source of the power of that government official actually comes from higher above, if the higher above entities did not exist, that government official would have no power. He would have no ability to execute anything. For instance, there are code enforcement officers that enforce code. You're renovating your house, I heard. And so you have to sometimes you have to be careful of these code and code officers. Now that code officer is a dude like you and me. He's just a normal guy. But he has the ability to enforce because that ability has been vested in him by higher authorities. Otherwise, he has no ability. Now, if you know the higher authority, you may be able to gain immunity. Of course, not in a properly functioning government. But still, even then, the president can pardon people. He can pardon criminals. He has that ability. He has the ability to pardon criminals that, say, another person can't do. So, in this way, those who are intelligent will see, okay, these different demigods are there. There's the sun, there's the moon, there's the earth, there's all these, the controller of air, the wind, and all these different demigods. Now, if they're all so powerful, how much more powerful must the source of their power be? Therefore, that intelligent person worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What's more, why are the impersonalists described as less intelligent? Because even though, as Srila Prabhupada is making the point over here, that he says in the end of the last paragraph, he says that from the study of the Gita, does it appear that the demigods and their abodes are impersonal? Clearly, neither the demigods nor Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are impersonal. So in this verse that Srila Prabhupada is quoting, the 23rd verse of this chapter, actually, it's just Antavattu phalam tesham tad bhavati alpamedasam devan deva yajo yanti madbhakta yanti mamapi. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. You see, the demigods, they also operate in the temporary realm that we live in, but they're more powerful positions. And, those who are ignorant think that, the Vedic culture or Bhagavad Gita speaks of polytheism. It's not polytheism. There is no polytheism, actually. And that concept of polytheism actually doesn't exist among the followers of the Vedanta. Right? There is one Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is one source. That one source is called Brahman, or is called Paramatma, and is also called Bhagavan. Now, those who are less intelligent, they worship the demigods because the demigods exist in this temporary realm and they are able to obtain that particular fruit. They become, what is that verse? Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayanta shreya prapram avapsyata. And then, let me see, that's chapter 2. Could you find the verse? Is it possible? I think it's right after that Purovacha Prajapatihi Anena Prasavishiyadvam Yeshavoshta Kamaduk. It's actually chapter 3, I'm sorry. Chapter 3. Deva bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha. If you tell me the verse, then I can go there. So, the demigods, now, you see, just like we have to cooperate with government officials, we have to cooperate. We also have to cooperate with the demigods. You can't, it's not that the demigods are to be disrespected. But, if one becomes a devotee of Krishna, 3:11? Okay, there you go. Okay. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the demigods being pleased by sacrifices will also please you. And thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. So Krishna consciousness, we don't ignore the demigods, we respect them, but we don't worship them. We don't spend time worshipping them. Why? Because there is no need. Because by performance of Krishna consciousness, that itself is a sacrifice. And that sacrifice pleases the demigods, by which they become pleased, and there's prosperity for everyone. Now, that being said, going back to the previous verse, why are the impersonalists called unintelligent? Because now the impersonalists, they understand, okay, I don't have to worship the demigods, fine. But they think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is impersonal. They think he's just energy. They think he's just a source of some energy without a particular characteristic that you cannot define, you cannot understand. Why are they called less intelligent? Because they cannot explain that. For instance, they cannot explain if the Supreme Personality of Godhead is impersonal, if the source of everything is impersonal, if we are also impersonal, if we don't actually have an eternal form, a spiritual form of our own, that is not like the body that we have, that is not the body where we die and we get a new body and things like that. Why did we get this body? Why are there so many forms? Why is everything that we know has a form? Where did all these forms come from? They say, no, it comes all from Brahman. Okay, why did Brahman create these forms? They cannot explain these things. Why? Because they don't understand that actually, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, this is chapter 15, the first verse. Right? Urdhva moolam adashakam ashwattam prahuravyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastam vedasa vedavit. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree in this world that has its roots upward and branches downward, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Where is a tree like this? The tree is a reflection. You don't have a tree where the roots are upward and the branches are... It's very interesting why it said a banyan tree, because one, banyan tree has its roots sticking out. Second is, the banyan tree has roots that drop down from its branches. There is, when you all visit Mayapur, I don't know if you'll get a chance, there's one place, I don't remember the exact location, but there's a place where there's a banyan tree, and the banyan tree is in the middle of the street, and practically it forms a canopy over the street, all over the street, and vehicles go underneath it, like forms like two pathways for forward moving vehicles and vehicles coming the other way. And if you look at it, it's like a big thicket, and it's one tree. It looks like it's multiple trees. It looks like it's a grove, but it's one tree. So this is a banyan tree, and the banyan tree, Krishna is explaining a banyan tree that's inverted, and he says, one who knows this is the knower of the Vedas. And how is that tree? Krishna says, the branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. The tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. So basically, this tree is the entire universe. This universe is this tree. And this tree has a form, the universe has a form. That tree is a reflection of what? Of forms, spiritual forms that exist in the spiritual world. And those forms are the source of our forms. Why is the two-handed form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, why is the two-handed form of Krishna said to be the supreme form? Because we have two-handed forms, and our two-handed forms come from his two-handed form. Our two-handed form cannot exist if he didn't have two hands. Now, but he also has 4 hands, he also has 8 hands, he also has 10 hands. Yes, the demigods also have those. We don't have. But that doesn't mean they don't have. And there are many living entities in this world that have more than 1 hand. We have only 2 hands, more than 2 hands. Right? Example, insects. They have many hands. Not very attractive, but they do. Now, the point is, these forms exist in the spiritual world. Therefore, they exist over here. Well, what is the difference? The forms here are temporary. They're made of matter. They're not eternal. Whereas the forms in the spiritual world are eternal, full of bliss, and full of knowledge. Our forms are not full of knowledge. We don't know. Yesterday, I was just eating some, fennel seeds, Just fennel seeds with a little, some sugar crystals. Just a normal thing. I was eating, and a little part, just a small tip of one of my tooth chipped off. I don't even know where it went. I must have swallowed it. No? How did that happen? I don't know. Why did it happen? I don't know. Now I have to go to a dentist. Our bodies are made of ignorance. We don't even know what is going on inside. We eat food, we don't know how it's getting digested. We have no clue. We have no ability. This body is full of ignorance. We are full of ignorance. And therefore, when we are ignorant and we just simply speculate, it may be like this, what if it's like that, maybe they're like that, he says like that, she says like that, they say like that, and we all just keep arguing with each other. It's completely useless. Even the best doctors and scientists don't know what's going on in the brain. The brain is still an enigmatic thing. For instance, where is the mind? They say the mind's in the brain. But if the mind's in the brain, how is the mind able to influence other people's minds? How is it that, one is able to communicate one's thoughts to another person without speaking, without saying anything, without even showing any signs of indicating it? How is it that, for instance, these are scientific studies that they cannot explain. How is it that a dog is able to see, its faculty, its senses are factually not capable of understanding that its master is now on his way home. But yet the dog, exactly at the time when the master leaves work or something like that, its owner leaves work, immediately stands next to the window and awaits exactly at the time that the owner left work. And the owner is working 20 miles away. How does the dog know that? What faculty of its brain is able to process that information? They cannot explain these things. We are full of ignorance. We have no understanding. Therefore, now what to speak? These are things that we have within our possession. These are things that we are experiencing today. Like we have, sometimes we just feel, for no reason, we just feel a little sad or depressed or mooded out. Why do we feel like that? I don't know. Why do I feel like that? I don't know why I feel like that. Of course, when we read Bhagavad Gita, we can understand it's the modes of material nature that are influencing us. And we are allowing ourselves to be subject to those modes of nature. But that being said, still, I may understand that it's the modes of nature, but exactly how it works, I don't know. Exactly how it works, I don't know. So, we are so ignorant. How can we, through our speculation, think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is formless? If we say that He is formless, if we say that He is impersonal, He has no characteristics, He has no qualities, then where did everything else come from? Why are there so many forms in the material universe? The Mayavadis cannot explain this. That's why they're called Mayavadis. Because their conception of the Supreme Lord is also illusory. Now, what is Brahman then? What is Brahman? What is that light that so many people who are pursuing spiritual life, they feel some light? What is that light? That also we cannot deny. Right? We cannot deny. So many experiences are there. Different religions, they say similar things. I saw some light, and that light made me feel very happy. This light that the impersonalists see is the effulgence that comes from the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That light that comes from His body is blinding. But because it originates from His body, it is full of bliss. Srila Prabhupada writes in chapter 14, text 27, this is Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyavasya cha shashvatasya ja dharmasya Sukhasyaikantikasya cha. So, and I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So, Brahman is true, is factual. But that Brahman, just like we have light, light is impersonal. Nobody is saying light doesn't exist. But that light has a source. And Krishna is the source of the impersonal Brahman. And that impersonal Brahman, what is that impersonal Brahman? That Brahman is immortal, imperishable, and eternal. Brahman is immortal, imperishable, eternal, and is the position of happiness. Happiness begins from there, because happiness in the spiritual sense does not exist if it is interrupted. Happiness that is interrupted, which is how it is in the material world, that interrupting happiness is not actually happiness. Because it's interrupted by what? What does happiness get interrupted by? Gets interrupted by misery. And therefore, that is not the position of ultimate happiness. Ultimate happiness has to be never ending. And that Brahman, which is the basis of that, and the constitutional position of that ultimate happiness, is simply the effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who are blinded, who do not have enough knowledge, who do not have the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, do not have the eyes to see beyond that brightness. See, different sensors and different types of equipment might be able to see things that we are not able to see. For instance, there are telescopes that can look at the sun and look at, the different aspects or whatever. There's this, what do they call that? Solar flares, or and then there's other things. There's some thing that like shoots over, and then it affects the communications on Earth, because it ejects so many electromagnetic waves and things like that. And there's what's called as solar winds and all that kind of stuff. So they can see that. When we look at the sun, our eyes get blinded. We're not supposed to look at it because our eyes will get damaged. But that solar telescope can look at the sun, and it can make us look at the sun also. So in this way, those who have the eyes of what? The eyes of love of God, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena, that through devotion, by accepting a humble position that Krishna, I cannot understand you, you have to reveal yourself to me. This position of humility is required for a devotee. And that humility begins by accepting the words that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, by accepting the association of devotees who are more experienced, and also, ultimately, by surrendering to a spiritual master who can teach us this knowledge. And by accepting that, all our problems are solved. Because Krishna is the source of not only the solutions, but also the problems too. Krishna is the source of the problems. The people don't like to hear it. Yes, God is the source of all problems. God is the source of misery. God is the source of disease. God is the source of everything undesirable. God is also the source of everything desirable. Everything comes from Him. How? By creating a reflection. By creating a reflection of the eternal blissful nature of the spiritual world, we get a reflection where things seem like they're blissful in the material world, only to come to a point where it feels that it's stale and it's temporary. So, one who understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one who accepts Krishna, he not only experiences what people experience by perceiving Brahman, but he experiences a lot more. What is that? He experiences the personality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why person? Because we all desire personal relationships. Even here. Why are we here? Because there is a community of spiritual people. Well, why desire a community in the first place if our goal is to be impersonal? Why do we want to be around people anyways? Why do we care about anything personal? Why are we attracted to these things? Why are we attracted? Maybe they say, yes, it's all illusion. There is a philosophy where they say it's all illusion. Everything is illusion. Fine. Everything is illusion. And their philosophy literally says that you need to stop doing everything that even that you feel is spiritual, you have to stop doing because it all has forms and characteristics. It is a very, very depressing philosophy if you actually think deeply about it. That is not Krishna consciousness. That is not what Krishna is expecting us to do either. Why? Okay. But then what about this concept that Krishna has like created us for service and this and that? No. Just like we like to have persons in our life. And just because we like to have persons in our life doesn't mean we're selfish. We're not selfish because we want to have other people in our life. Why do you want to have other people in your life? You're so selfish you want to have other people in your life? Why can't you just exist by yourself? No, but having other people in our life doesn't necessarily mean I'm having them for exploitation. There is service, there is a relationship, there is give and take. But it is voluntary. It is voluntary. That is called love. And when we understand voluntarily that it is in our best interest to be amongst people who are selfless, who are not associating with us out of selfish reasons, but they are selflessly associating with us. And the true platform of selflessness only comes when one becomes Krishna conscious, because one understands who one is, one understands who everybody else is, one understands who is the source of everything in this world, and then one understands the relationship between all these things. Then there is a true relationship that one establishes between oneself and everything in this material world, including all living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. On that platform, why do we want to associate? Why then do we have relationships? So that we can all mutually advance in our understanding of Krishna, advance in developing our relationship with Krishna. And that all happens voluntarily through the medium of service. By first accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then what? Then the residents of Vrindavan, if you look here in this pastime of Aghasura, the snake demon, the cowherd boys are voluntarily entering into the mouth of the snake, that is opening its mouth to kill them. But what is the point over there? The point over there is that the cowherd boys are so confident that Krishna will come and save them. And in Vrindavan, they don't have the conception that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They just know that Krishna is everything for them. That's all. It is the highest conception. It takes a lot of spiritual maturity for one to reach that stage. But on the ultimate stage, which is what is being revealed to us, is God is not playing God anymore. He is the source of everything. But He is just the center of attraction. And that center of attraction, why? Because He is all attractive. But how are His devotees? Are they all unattractive? No, the devotees are extremely attractive. They are so attractive that Krishna is attracted to them. Krishna is attracted to His devotees. In this position of devotional service, one has relationships when one can be even greater than God. The whole pastime of Damodar that we are reciting today is, or every day in this month, we chant Damodarashtakam, is where Yashoda Devi is chastising Krishna for stealing butter. But who can chastise God? God is the chastiser of everyone in the form of death. Nobody can escape death. Death is one of the forms in which Krishna reveals Himself to the atheists. But the devotee is not afraid of death. Why? Because the devotee knows what death is. It's just the changing of this body, that's all. A devotee who is situated in his relationship knows what his destination is. Just like we go into our closet and change our clothes, we are not scared of that. But a child may be scared of it, and they are. Sometimes you try to put a shirt on a baby, or you try to put a pant on a baby, and it freaks out. It cries and kicks its leg and all that kind of stuff. We don't do that. You go into the closet and you don't start kicking your legs. Why? Because we know what it is. After some time, the child becomes, okay, I know, yeah. But initially, no, it won't change. It doesn't want to change clothes. Doesn't want to do so many things. So, eventually, the child comes to the understanding that although, and we also have experience of this. Why do people so fondly remember like childhood sometimes? Childhood is something that people like to remember. Oh, my childhood. In my childhood, I feel nostalgic. Oh, those beautiful days. In general, people in this world, except few unfortunate people, most people fondly remember childhood. Why? They were controlled when they were children. But it is controlled out of love. That is not something that is undesirable. We have experience of this. To live that carefree life. But carefree life because we know the mother is there. We know the father is there. Okay, they're going to take care of me. The child doesn't care. The child doesn't think, how am I going to have my next meal? Doesn't think. That's the parent's problem. Not my problem. My problem is take the crayon and scribble on the wall. That's my problem. So the child knows. And so like this, that position, actually, that position of being submissive, that position of being dependent, that is actually a very desirable position. Actually, there was a political professor in Oxford. There's a name actually. Guru Maharaj cites that. I forget. He mentions it a couple of times in his lectures. He said actually the best form of government is not capitalism. It's not socialism. It's not communism. What is it? Benevolent monarchy. This is the best form of governance. He said the problem is it doesn't exist. Because monarchs or autocrats become infatuated by power. And they lose themselves. I was watching a whole video, it was just scrolling through a bit just to try to understand, about Soviet communism. And many times, at least especially in Soviet communism, the communists, the Soviets, who overthrew the monarch, the Tsar, at the time, the king that lineage had ruled Russia for 300 years. And they overthrew the last Tsar, I don't know how they say it. But what happened is, they became literally the people perpetuating the same problems that they stood against and they overthrew that monarch for. Eventually, they created a society of elites because they were ultimately in control. Although the philosophy of communism is that everybody is equal and everybody has to share, nobody's rich, nobody's poor. Still, those in the government, they're more important. They have control automatically. And so seeing this, this professor was like, oh yeah, no, benevolent monarchy is the best, but it doesn't exist. Where you have a king who's very benevolent, he's strict, but he's not puffed up. He cares for the citizens. He's generous. This is the best form of governance. Now, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the transcendental autocrat. There's a name for Krishna like that. It's called Kartamashai. He's the boss. But what kind of a boss is he? He's not a narcissistic, nasty boss who just wants to suck every drop of blood out of your body and take your bones away too. No. Krishna is a wonderful, very loving autocrat. How do I know? Well, there's nothing much to lose by worshipping Krishna, because in this world, we're filled with people who are actually because of the bodily concept of life, are acting selfish. It is worth approaching Krishna. It is worth giving Krishna consciousness a shot. If one at least has the conviction that there is rebirth, that this life is not all in all. There is karma, there is reincarnation. You have unlimited lifetimes to try whatever damn thing you want to try. Today this lifetime you can try to be Krishna conscious, but you have unlimited lifetimes. This is just a logical argument. Although from the Shastra, from the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, we can understand this is perfect philosophy. It answers all questions. And Krishna is a wonderful person. And we don't have to wait until we get to that platform to associate with Krishna. Krishna gives us his association before that. Krishna loves us. He reciprocates with us. Devotees are going to New York now. I was just thinking, see, one devotee had some great desire to go and see these places of Prabhupada's pastimes. Krishna fulfilled it. He fulfilled it. It wasn't planned, wasn't expected. At least I know of one. There might be others. I don't know. But Krishna fulfills. Krishna fulfills desires. He fulfills desires in amazing ways. When we become Krishna conscious, the more we surrender, the more the blissful life becomes. The more we give up the misconception that I am the doer. This concept that I am the doer, where I have to do everything, this puts us in a lot of misery. This is why we become anxious. It doesn't mean we just lie down and sleep. No. But we try to mold our life in a manner that is pleasing to Krishna and is favorable to our development of Krishna consciousness. For that, one must take instruction from experienced devotees, associate with devotees, read these books. Reading the books is extremely important. Without reading the books, you won't understand anything. Chanting our rounds, ultimately taking shelter. So I'll give the mic like that, something. Any questions, the men? Any comments?
Yes, awesome. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Is that green light glowing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like in this verse that was quoted in the purport, Antavatupalam Tesham, it's like Krishna saying that like people are unintelligent whenever they worship the demigods because the fruits are like limited and temporary. But before that, in the same chapter, Krishna is talking about how like materialistic people also like approach him and like for like material things.
Yeah.
So like, are those people who are approaching Krishna for like temporary and limited things, are they also like
No, Krishna calls this Urdharadihi. Krishna calls them intelligent. It's very interesting that Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukriti norjuna. What's the verse number? I'm bad with verse numbers. Anyways, I'll just search.
21 or something.
Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukriti norjuna. Yeah, 7:16. Okay. So Krishna says, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukriti norjuna artho jignasu artharthi jnani cha bharatarshava. O best among Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render service, devotional service unto me. The distressed, the desire of wealth, inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. Now, interestingly, so there are people who approach Krishna wanting material desires fulfilled or just relief from material problems. Now, you can say those people, oh, they're seeking material benefits on the temporary platform. Still, Krishna actually calls them, he says, Tesham jnani nikti ekabhakti priyo Udara sarva evaite. That all these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls. Krishna calls them magnanimous. He doesn't put them on the same category as demigod worshippers or the impersonalists. Why? Because they approached him. They at least recognized that he is the source of everything. And yes, although they are foolish to want to have material desires fulfilled, still they are magnanimous because they approach Krishna. Krishna is very happy. Oh, at least you recognized me. Why is Krishna happy about that? Because we have a relationship with him. He has a relationship with us. Just like when we have a relationship with someone, we have a friend. There is a friend. That friend is walking past us. If that friend doesn't acknowledge our presence, do we not feel pained? Why do we feel pained? Because we're puffed up and narcissistic? No, because we have a relationship. There is that expectation. I've done so much for you. How come you don't recognize me? Krishna is doing so much for us every single time. He's situated within our very hearts. And He's providing for all our needs, whether we like it or not. Whether we appreciate it or not. Therefore, when someone recognizes, okay, at least he's coming. Just like even if you're a disobedient child, but you approach your parents for something, they're still happy, at least you approached me. He didn't go somewhere else. Because the parent gets very upset. Why'd you go ask the neighbor for a toy? Why don't you come and ask me for a toy? Now, the point is that's the thing. When there is a relationship, there is an expectation. So Krishna is very happy. He calls them magnanimous. And that's how kind Krishna is. That even though He is the Lord of the universe, even though He is fully self-satisfied, unlike us, He's not lacking. Like just because we don't have a relationship with Krishna, Krishna is not lacking in any way. We may feel lacking when we don't have relationships with people. When people who we love, we may feel lacking. No, Krishna is not like that. He's self-sufficient. He's supreme. He's perfect in all regard. But still, in spite of that, out of His love for His devotee, the moment the devotee approaches Him for anything, He feels very happy about it. He feels they're called magnanimous souls. He glorifies them. Okay? Anything else? Yes, Janardhan Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So this idea that everything is just energy or God is impersonal, there's different conceptions of that. Like yesterday we were talking about how in Judaism and Islam they also have this conception that God is impersonal and formless.
Right.
But then where did this idea that, okay, because like God is energy and is like all pervasive, that I am also God, this like conception that everybody's God, where did this come into play? Was it like a part of that, or is it like a misunderstanding of this like Paramatma realization?
It's a stretch, it's a misunderstanding, because you see, when you say that God is formless, you cannot describe Him. When religions say that, it's impossible for people to speculate as to what the nature of the Supreme might be. You just say, no, you cannot describe Him, you cannot explain anything. So people tend to speculate about that. And like I said, the conception is that it obviously, because you are trying to conceive of something that is inconceivable, and your conception of everything is based on a temporary realm within this world, you're going to start to evaluate things with your limited experience. And therefore the frog in the well philosophy is given. That, what is that, a seagull? Or is some bird came from the, no, the frog, okay, but there was another frog. Okay, so anyways, there was another frog that came from the ocean and said, oh, there's a body of water called the ocean, and it's so big. And this frog in the well said, oh, how big? Like 3 times this well? 5 times? 10 times? 100 times? No, it's even bigger. How is bigger? How can it be bigger? How many times? How many wells? But no, how many ever wells you put? You cannot measure the ocean with the well. But this is what happens when people don't have a conception of the Supreme. But then why speculate about the Supreme? Because the truth is we are intimately connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is impossible. Just like atheists say, sometime God, people will forget about God. No, there will never be a civilization, there will never be a time in this world ever when people stop talking about God. Why? Because we are related to Him. They say it's what do they call it? The God syndrome? Or the God's, Richard Dawkins says something in that regard. Huh?
The God gene?
God gene or God syndrome or something like that. He says, oh, it's like this genetic thing that's like kind of in the head, and eventually sometime it'll go away. Another bunch of nonsense speculation. In fact, the atheists probably talk more about God than some of the agnostics do. So, why? Because we are connected with the Supreme Personality. Got it. Now, somebody who's more intelligent thinks I'm connected, so I'm connected, he's my source. How should he be? I should be the same like him. I'm similar to him. I'm also eternal. I'm not temporary. When you see, the moment you understand that you're eternal, and you understand that there is Brahman, and you consider that Brahman to be impersonal, and you're eternal, what is your conception of eternality in this world? Nothing. Therefore, since you think that Brahman is impersonal because he's eternal, and you're also eternal, therefore you must also be impersonal. Therefore, you and him must be the same. This is how it builds up that faulty logic. It just keeps going on building like this. So that's why they think they're God. And the Mayavadis, they say Brahman Satyam Jagat Mithya, because everything that has a form is false. Brahman is only real. Brahman doesn't have a form. We are real because we're thinking about things that have forms. This thing is not thinking. It may have AI, but it's still not thinking. So therefore, I must be God. So this is how it goes. It's, yeah. There's many other ways in which that is constructed. Ultimately, Srila Prabhupada points out it is actually our infection that we want to be God. We play God in this world. That's why we are conditioned souls. We do not want to accept Krishna's authority. We do not want to serve him. And therefore, the last snare of Maya is to consider oneself to be God, or to become one with God. I shall become God. I shall merge with God, and take up this impersonal philosophy, which has many like very intelligent arguments and this and that, and just but it does not help one.
So it's like the same basic misunderstanding. Just those people take like the logic a little further once they
a lot further, and then they interpret the Vedas and the Upanishads. They use word jugglery and this and that. It's like they take it so far that it almost seems like it has no similarity at all. In fact, they would say that how can you say that there is any similarity between, say, an Islamic conception of God versus the Mayavadis? They would actually be offended by it. But there is a common, there is something in common. Not everything, but there is something in common. And the primary misconception still continues. Yes?
So elsewhere, like Prabhupada explains how like impersonalists might get like some kind of temporary liberation from like following like that path.
Yeah, Prabhupada says that in this purport. No, not this one. What was that purport I pulled up? He says that here, 1427. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. He says that one who cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman runs the risk of falling down, which means that in the Brahman conception, impersonal Brahman conception, one still has the risk of falling down, because you have to elevate yourself beyond that impersonal conception.
So the risk is there of falling down, but it can be implied that some don't. So does that mean that like there are some souls whose constitutional position is being situated in the impersonal Brahman?
No.
Okay.
The thing is, when we say that there is a possibility that some souls may stay there, we are speaking in terms of time. Time doesn't exist on the impersonal realm, and therefore them being over there seems basically eternal, but it is not an eternal position of the spirit soul, because the spirit soul is meant to love Krishna and serve him. Therefore, the spirit soul at some point of time will desire to engage in activity. Will have desire, straight. Let's say it like that. Desire. The moment you have desire, there is action.
Is it possible to serve Krishna's impersonal?
Is it possible to serve? How do you serve something that's impersonal? Again, this is how do you serve something that's impersonal? How do you serve light? How are you supposed to serve light? It doesn't reciprocate. How can you serve? Not possible. Okay. Anything from the Matajis?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. That's not going to come from there, but the people online can listen.
Okay. So I want to thank you for your words of wisdom, first and foremost. I guess my first question, well, I agree that Brahman...
You can keep that closer. Yeah.
Yes, Brahman technically can't be worshipped physically because it is technically like a state of mind. So it's like an impersonal, like it's more of an internal thing to connect with. And so I guess my question would be like, is it okay to tap into that state of mind, or like, would that be wrong? Even though it's not worshipable.
So Brahman is not a state of mind.
Okay.
Let's make that clear. What is Brahman? Brahman is the eternality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is His eternality, it is His imperishability, and it signifies that immortality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahman itself has a place. Mm-hmm. Like Brahman is the effulgence that comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That effulgence is visible for someone who crosses over the material world and is basically at the juncture. I don't know if you use that word in the United States. Juncture or the threshold of entering into the spiritual world. At that point of time, that place is called Brahman because you're out of this material world, right? Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of how that conception is realized when one is still having a material body, right? You're still having a material body. When you realize that conception, you are called Brahman realized. It is not a state of mind, it is above the mind itself. Okay? So,
can you elaborate on that? What do you
sorry?
mean it's about? When you said it's about the mind, what do you mean?
It's above the mind.
Oh, it's above the mind.
It's above the mind.
Above the mind, okay.
Yeah, it's not about the mind, it's above the mind. It's above the mind. That Brahman state of realization is when one realizes that one fully and completely realizes that one is eternal. That means one has no fear of death, absolutely none. And one is not affected by anything temporary in this world. Anything, no temporary change can affect one. That stage, these are some of the characteristics of someone who is Brahman realized. Because he understands that he also is a part of that Brahman. He is of the same quality of that Brahman. Now, that state which signifies supreme peace, because no longer one is affected by temporality. You know, you are in that state of being Brahman realized. That state is where one realizes that one is eternal, but one still does not know what activity one has to perform. You see, you realize that you're eternal. You realize that nothing in this world temporary, no form of temporary happiness or misery disturbs one's mind. Doesn't attract one's mind either. One, in that sense, is fully detached and calm. But in that state, what do you do? Where do you go from there? That is where Krishna consciousness comes in. So what Krishna consciousness has is it has that state too, but it has more. Those who are Brahman realized only stay at that state of Brahman realization. And what is the problem with that? The problem is every living entity has desire. Desire leads to action. The moment you have desire, you have to act. You have activity. Now, when we have material desires, we perform material activities that bind us in the cycle of karma and cause us to become bound in the cycle of birth and death. And therefore, those people who are Brahman realize they avoid having desire. They don't want to have any desire. But the desire to become desireless is a desire in itself. Therefore, after experiencing that position of eternality and peace, it is natural for the living entity, because of his constitutional position of who he is, immediately to develop desire. Now, if he doesn't have understanding of spiritual desire, what happens? He develops material desire again. Because he doesn't know how to act on any platform other than that of the material platform. Because he doesn't have a conception of the spiritual world, spiritual activity, spiritual form, Krishna being spiritual, spiritual service, spiritual activity. He doesn't have a conception of that. He thinks all activity is material, all activity will bind, all activity generates karma. But Krishna conscious activities do not generate karma. Say you're chanting Hare Krishna, you come for Mangal Arati. You dance and kiss, this is all activity. We take prasadam, there is no karma in this. But people outside, when they eat, they get karma. But we don't get karma. This is called akarma. There is sukarma, or just called karma. Then there is vikarma, which is bad karma. So you have punya, like performing pious activities. Say you go and you give somebody some clothes, or you give someone some water, you build a hospital, or whatever. These are called pious activities. They lead one to the heavenly planets. Then you have vikarma, which is sinful activities. That leads, one to misery, or the lower species, or hell. And then there's akarma, which is Krishna conscious activities, which lead one to liberation.
Could you combine both?
Combine what?
The Brahman state of being, in Krishna
The thing is,
consciousness.
the Brahman state is already within Krishna consciousness. One does not need to independently strive for that. And one who independently strives, Krishna talks about that. Where is that? Krishna says that this is difficult. I think it's the 12th chapter. Yeah. It's probably, yep. Okay. Arjuna asked the question, Evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvam paryupasate yechapyaksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Maya Veshya Manoye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Tame Yukta Tamo Mataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their mind on their personal form and always engage in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. Now, when we say something is most perfect, it includes perfections that are found in other things that are relatively perfect. It is not that Krishna consciousness, you don't get the benefit of what you get because Krishna consciousness begins after the platform of Brahman. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness has already realized what Brahman is. Therefore, independently, if one does, one independently tries to combine Krishna consciousness and then trying to doing something in realizing Brahman or something like that, impersonal, one has not understood neither.
I think Brahman is more of a development of your spirit.
See, it's not about what we think.
Well, it's not a think. I can only speculate from my personal experience. I can't speak for other people, but it's more of a inner development of your spirit soul, more so than just like being in a state of being. It's developing that state of mind.
See, like you just admitted, you will only be able to speculate. The point is, as long as we're on the platform of speculation, we can always be wrong. And when one is striving to reach perfection, one should come out of the state of being imperfect. And the beginning of coming out of the state of being imperfect is to accept knowledge from a perfect source.
But isn't everything technically a speculation?
No.
And
No.
what would make things true if they're not? The things that we determine are true are what we can feel within our senses: taste, feel, smell, touch, sight.
That's not true.
We cannot. Well, I mean, like other
When
than
you're
our
sick,
senses,
when
how
you're
else can
sick,
we-
even
Yeah.
what you taste, like when you're sick, say when we had COVID, you couldn't taste. You
Yes.
had no taste. You can't taste anything. You can't smell anything. Doesn't mean the taste doesn't exist, doesn't mean the senses. So, this is the problem. That the premise is that whatever we see, taste, touch, and smell is true, or is even somewhat true. It is imperfect.
True in this material space. So I'm saying, how are we going to determine?
No, but my point is,
what's-
even in the material space,
Okay.
it is sometimes not true.
Okay.
So, with such imperfect senses, what is the use of speculating? Why are we intrinsically opposed to even theoretically accepting that there is a perfect source? Why can there not be a perfect source when this whole universe has been created by the intelligence of a being whose intelligence we cannot even fathom?
Okay, so I guess my question of speculation is more referring to people who have generated and collected the knowledge. How can we say that that knowledge or the information that was received was not speculated?
Okay, see, in that inbuilt is also a premise that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, or God, who created this world, this universe, that Supreme Being, gave nothing for us to receive directly from Him, and that the only option we have is to speculate. No, just like a car manufacturer does give a manual with the car. Similarly, Krishna created this entire universe, which is way better than a car. Our bodies are so perfect. The universe is so perfect in functioning in so many ways. Such a perfect being has also given us scriptures by which we can understand, and these scriptures come from Him. They are coming from Him. They are not speculation. And
They are written by somebody.
they are not, no, they are not.
Okay.
This is the thing. It is spoken by Krishna and it is handed down.
Okay.
And how do we know? If you read these books, you will understand.
Okay. And I guess my other question would be if the Brahman state of reality seems to be effective, and because a lot of people do practice, I think things are within everything, Brahman is within Krishna, as we stated before. But I think there is a level of self-understanding that Brahman provides, a state of self-realization that being in the Brahman state of mind provides. So I understand what you're saying, it's all within Krishna consciousness, but can we agree that Brahman is providing some form of substance?
No. See, the thing is that, first of all, Brahman is not within Krishna. This is another misconception. Just because we have a spirit soul inside a material body, Krishna's body doesn't have a soul inside it. Krishna's body is fully spiritual. He doesn't have some Brahman or some entity inside him who's speaking through him. This is again imposing because we have the body and we are separate to the body, therefore Krishna's body and Krishna must be separate. Brahman and Krishna must be separate. That is not true. That is one thing. Second thing is that you're talking about Brahman providing everything, but you have to first understand that Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, Krishna is the same thing, same
Yes,
person.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Therefore,
They're all connected.
but Brahman is an imperfect understanding of Krishna.
Okay.
It is a limited understanding of Krishna. There is a more perfect understanding of Krishna, which is known as his Bhagavan feature. And Brahman, if we're saying provides everything, But Brahman is impersonal. Brahman doesn't have a form,
But
doesn't have a
Brahman
characteristic.
Brahman does actually have a form, and I think being impersonal, being
No,
so
no, 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 no,
vast,
no, no.
there is a
Brahman,
form
Brahman,
of
Brahman,
Brahman.
the Brahman state does not have a form.
Okay, well, we can
and
disagree.
and
Um,
and it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. Who cares about what your opinion or my opinion is? The point is, as long as we're on this platform where your opinion, my opinion, and this and that, then we're still on that speculation platform. But here, these words, how do we know where Brahman comes from? That's what I asked. How do you know where Brahman? Where did you hear this word Brahman from? That word Brahman is found in the Vedas. And instead of taking the definition that Brahman, that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, we come up with our own definition. What sort of nonsense is that?
I have a question, but this is geared towards Krishna. I remember asking or reading.
No, but let's
Oh, I'm
just
sorry.
first let's try to understand
Yeah,
this.
it was more about like the body when you said Krishna's body, and the question was like Krishna being human or coming in human
No,
form, but
he's not human. He's not human.
But not by seminal, not by like traditional.
Whatever. He doesn't have a body like us.
Okay. He came in human form, and I spoke to a Mataji at the ashram the other day, and she referred to the fact that Krishna was killed, but by choice. So and he was on the earth for 125 years. So I just wanted some clarification on, like, when we say body, or we say that other beings emanate from him, but then he has a physical form, and he was killed by choice, but was removed from this worldly space and was actually present in this worldly space. If your opinion would be.
See, Krishna was not killed.
Okay.
Okay? That's why you need to read the books, because anybody can say anything.
It was a Mataji.
And I understand. So just because they're Mataji doesn't mean it's like they have to speak according to what's in the book. Krishna, it's not that he was killed. See, it's not just killed by choice. Krishna was not killed the way a living entity is killed. It's not like, so many people are getting killed. It's not that Krishna was killed like that. Krishna was neither removed from a physical space. Krishna exists right here, right now. And the only thing is that he has become manifest and unmanifest to our eyes. When Krishna appears in this world, he becomes manifest by his own will. His activities, his form, his pastimes, it becomes manifest to people in this world. And when he winds up his pastimes, and that means he disappears, he becomes unmanifest. Even today, Krishna's pastimes are going on in Vrindavan. But we don't have the ability to see them. But when Krishna appears in the material world, that means his pastimes are manifest. So Krishna manifests and unmanifests, which means his form, his personality is all eternal. Our forms are not manifested, our forms are created, and our forms are destroyed.
Okay. So like that was just like a speculation from like what I heard about him being killed was like a speculation.
Well, if it's the way you're saying it,
Well, no,
then
it's not the way I'm saying.
no. If
He was like-
the Mataji explained it the way you're explaining it,
Well, I will explain it how she explained it. I asked her about Krishna being killed, and she said that he was shot by an arrow by a
Correct.
hunter.
Correct.
Because the hunter mistook him for a deer. But
Correct.
she forgave the hunter and was like, I forgive you. And he left, the hunter left and excused himself, but did not say Krishna specifically died. It said that at the time he wanted to leave his body, but he chose to leave. He did not like leave a body and, he
So
just
Krishna didn't
left.
leave his body. That's the
left.
point.
Just-
No, Krishna didn't leave the body. He disappeared from that scene. He disappeared with his form. Krishna's body was not buried or burned or anything like that. That pastime is executed for the sake of bewildering those souls who want to believe that Krishna had a body and left his body. Krishna didn't leave his body. Yes, the hunter shot him. Yes, he forgave the hunter. Yes, he wanted to wind up his pastimes and, disappear from this world. Yes, that is all true. But Krishna did not leave a body. That is the point. He went with his same body, form, Because Krishna, when we use this word body, we have to understand that there is no difference between Krishna's body and Krishna's, like Krishna himself.
So in the way his body manifested, it was more so not like flesh, but more so like a state of matter, a state of
No, it's neither matter. It's not matter at
energy,
all.
you know.
It's Krishna's
was
form
born.
is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss.
Okay.
It is spiritual by nature. That which is spiritual is completely opposite to matter. It is not made of matter. It is not made of anything material, flesh and everything like that. It may seem like it, but it is a reflection, just like a mango that is reflected in water may have the looks of a mango, but it has nothing like a mango. It's just water. But, and then we could think that all mangoes are made of water. No, because the only experience we have is the reflection. But the actual mango is made of something completely different than water.
So why did
Okay,
he send
I should
Okay.
end here.
Okay, thank you so
But
much.
all right, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha